Hi, Misha here, and recently did a video on why the Russian Izhmash, today Kalashnikov Concern, SGL-31, has been and still is my favorite AK, at least one of them in the day I'm feeling, but you know how that goes. It's kind of a follow-up and companion. I thought we would talk about again and revisit the last firearm configuration to come out of Russia, the Molot VEPR FM-RPK74M, also imported by FIME Group, who imported the SGLs from 2013 till they were sanctioned in 2014. Before that, it was Arsenal, same basic company. And after the sanction on Izhmash, Kalashnikov Concern products, the main focus in the USA was on VEPRs, Molots. And they enjoyed quite the heyday between 2015 and 2017, but then in June of that year, 2017, they too were added to the list of sanctioned companies. And with that, we received no more firearms from Russia. And that does not seem like that's anything that will be changing any year, any decade soon, unfortunately. So with that, let's revisit. And unfortunately, because of limited availability of ammo, I don't have any new shooting footage of the gun, but I do have a couple of older clips. So let's roll one of those, and then we'll get to talking.
FM-RPK74.
Here we have some accessories. This is a drop case, Russian in origin, meant for the RPK series. It can also hold some other types of guns like the Sega 12 or VEPR 12 shotgun, and even some of the longer fixed stock guns if you need to. Pretty neat, typical not twist ties, but cotton straps, but just more of them. Here we have a Russian Sling, although this one is a little different. And here we have a 4-cell Russian RPK mag pouch. This is the version that does not have the pocket here. And it holds 45 round mags with an adjustable shoulder strap and retains belt loops on the back. The mags and pouch came from Legion USA about 5 years ago, and the drop case came from KVAR about 12 years ago. So with that, the rifle itself. And now out of the case. I might more straps on this than the standard one, and it kind of has an interesting rear section here for the pistol grip area. Here's the modern nylon fiberglass reinforced magazine to match the true black furniture. Very standard pouch inside with a button closure. It has 2 different spots for the button, so you can kind of scale it for different magazines. And of course, the RPK7433 is a semi-automatic version of the RPK74M, aka the RPK200. Produced by Molot, who has built the RPK since the early 60s. Interestingly, the RPK design itself was developed, patented if you will, at Izhevsk, today Izhmash, and then Izhmash and today Kalashnikov Concern, but they did not have production capacity, so it was transferred to what we know as Molot, who specialized in machine guns and cannons. And you know the deal with an RPK, I'm sure. But these were due to hit the American market later in 2017, along with the version in 762x39. They were going to do both 545x39 here and 762x39, but plans got derailed because of the sanction coming down. Previously, Royal Tiger IO had imported the 5.56 NATO version as the VEPR 1V. I have a feeling they meant to name it VEPR like Roman numeral 4, but this is Royal Tiger IO we're talking about, so of course they even screwed up the name. So all three calibers were imported, but quite limited numbers, and it's just an interesting configuration. Earlier in the year, I talked about the Romanian AES-10B video, kind of a tribute to it, because it's really the most authentic, original RPK we've ever received as an import. So you can check that out if you want. This, on the other hand, is based on the modernized version, pattern. The RPK transitioned over to being the RPK74, and then the RPK74M. And while Molot kept a lot of things similar, they did change up a lot of things. And just with the AK-74, AK-74M thing, we hear the devil's kind of in the details. And that's what makes this a very interesting swan song for the Russian Molot imports. We'd been receiving them since the late 90s, frankly. The first importer I ran across was Robinson Arms, maker of the C96, the XC96, the XCR. They had some really interesting things back in the day, and were one of the earliest VEPR importers. But those VEPRs were more sporterized, although most of them did have a pistol grip and took standard mags, so they weren't quite as sported as the Segas of the day and time. Still, they weren't set up as an RPK, truly would be. They were also much more expensive even back then compared with Segas, and much rarer. They came in much smaller numbers, and were always well thought of back then, but never really made a name for themselves, at least not until the FM-47 and FM-74 started coming in via Fime Group in 2015. That's really when they exploded on the scene, and they really did take over from the Segas. Just as the AK-74M kind of consolidated features with previous AK-74s, so did the RPK-74M. It made the side rail, the so-called Warsaw Pact rail, a standard feature before it had been considered an option with the RPK-74N. It made the folding stock a standard feature. Before that, it had been only on the RPKS-74. It also updated the latch. It added this on the side to easily fold it. Before that, you actually had to use a button. When we flip it over, we'll look at it with a bullet tip to fold the stock, because this was meant as a light machine gun. And much as with the AK-74M, it introduced new true black polymer fiberglass reinforced furniture. The RPKS always had a folding clubfoot stock with the trapdoor for the cleaning kit, but like I said, this updated it and made it standard. This is the modern Molot, kind of oversized pistol grip. Plenty of RPK-74Ms have the more traditional grip too. That's about all the changes they made back there. Moving forward, the bipod and collar were updated a little bit to give a little better rotation and durability. And the flash hider was updated. The original RPK usually had a nut here, and then the RPK-74 had a birdcage on 14x1 left-hand threads. The RPK-74M used the same type of birdcage on the same threads, but it's actually a thinner wall. And I'm not 100% sure why they reduced the wall of the flash hider. Maybe to save a little weight, maybe for cleaning, or maybe just it was easier to produce this way. I'm sure there was a reason, but I don't know what it is. I should point out that some of the variants have a bump rivet here, like the AK74M, but the 545 version does not. It is on the 5.56 version, like the VEPR 1V, also known as the RPK201. The RPK203 is the same gun, chambered in 760x39, and sometimes it's known as the RPK-M. Flipping her over, you can still see the hole originally used to put a bullet tip in to fold the stock on the RPKS-74. Standard selector, of course on a semi-auto, there's 2 position. On a machine gun, there are 3, full auto. Pretty standard stamped mag catch. Interestingly, whereas on the AK-74M, the bolt carrier is cast, on the RPK-74, RPK-74M, they continued to machine it. And the guide rod for the recoil spring is still machined versus being the wire type. Again, polymer handguards with heat shield inside. And we have the standard heavy barrel, chrome line, cold hammer forged. The barrel is about 23¼ inches long, and that gives the rifle itself an overall length of 41¾ inches. So it is longer than the original RPK. Most of that, though, is the birdcage flash hider. Here's that sling. Note it does not have the shoulder pad, and it has the double hook style. This is something Russian troops started using in the Afghan war on RPKs. Just makes it a little easier to detach and reattach, and a little more flexible, especially with folding stocks coming into use more and more. So kind of neat, I think. Standard 45 round mag with the ridges. The 5.56 version looks similar to this, but is different, has a little bit different of an angle, and the 5.56 mags are actually quite rare. And of course this takes standard 30 round mags as well as the older Bakelite 45 rounders. Another interesting aspect to the RPK-74 as well as the AK-74M, they started to dimple press the barrel hardware on as a time-saving measure. In the 90s, early 2000s, you can see the dimples on each side getting away from pins. One here for the collar for the cleaning rod. However, and I've researched this as best I can, I could be wrong, but I don't believe they ever dimple press the front sight base on the RPK-74M. And that's because you cannot remove the barrel, the collar for the bipod off the barrel unless you remove the front sight. So for maintenance and repair, this is usually still pinned on because you can drive out the pins and drive it off. With the dimple hardware, there's really no good way to remove it and reinstall it. Once it's drilled out, it's out, and you always run the risk of damaging the side of your barrel. So this was continued to be pinned on to allow for maintenance of our stamped steel bipod. It's not adjustable, pretty fixed, and that also leads to monopoding of the 45 round mag. Now of course when it's in your shoulder it's fine, but if you try to rest it, you have to tilt it to the side. I have to wonder if that's one reason they enlarged the sides of the collar so that at least you could hang it like this. It also would make changing mags easier. Keep in mind this is a fixed barrel. It is not replaceable in the field at all. So even though it has a cyclic rate in the military version of about 600, practical rate of fire is only about 50 rounds per minute, so about 1 mag per minute. Otherwise you run the danger of overheating. The rear side, of course, is both elevation and windage adjustable. Maximum range, ranges on this, it's felt to be 500 out to about 800 meters standard effective range. 1,000 meters is maximum. and the bullets themselves can go about 3,000 meters before losing anything, but you're not going to hit anything at that. Of course, RPKs and VEPRs have the 1.5 millimeter stamped receiver, bulge front trunnion, and heavy duty top cover, although your AK-74Ms also have a heavier top cover. Everything about this is just thicker and bigger, especially towards the receiver area. Just a very bulked up gun, including the folding stock assembly here. Having the external catch is certainly nice. And you have the catch inside here for your thumb to release. So a different system than on the AK. But it does allow it to be compact for transport, and with mechanized infantry and all that, it just made sense to standardize. Adding the rail and stock hinge did add some weight, but then having the polymer furniture reduced some weight. So this is about 11 1/3 to 11.5 pounds unloaded. And then with the full mag in, you're a bit over 12 pounds. So not super heavy, lighter than the RPD, but of course it comes at a cost of a fixed barrel and, all that. So essentially very much a light LMG, definitely not a medium. Well, let's plug in another shooting clip. FM-RPK74. The VEPR series comes with a 30 round mag, at least in 5.45 by 39, and certainly they can feed from AK-74 mags of all types, but the 45 rounder was a standard. They had tried out making a drum mag for the original RPK-74, but it never went anywhere. The 45 round mag was a compromise. Although in the 21st century, they started to use, at least sometimes, a new 60 round magazine, a casket style, which is a quad stack. This is a 15% or 15 rounds more, 25% increase, or 33%. I'm very tired, I apologize. That helps. It also has a few advantages. If you notice, it still fits with the stock folded, something a drum probably wouldn't do. And it really gets rid of the monopotting effect, of course, right here, because the stock's folded. It still does, but it doesn't really hang down much farther than a 30 round mag. Quite a bit shorter than the 45. So a little more compact, and even though it's wider, not wide enough to interfere with the folded stock. Now, your real 60 round mags are very rare. They're made by Izhmash Kalashnikov concern. This is a copy made by Puffgun, but it is in Russia, and the newer Puff guns, when they came in, did have metal tab reinforcements. So they're fun, and they're reliable. Although I would still say the double stack 45 and 30s are more reliable, but they're very simple inside. Really, the only difference is the follower. But that's, some of your newer RPK-74Ms could have these issued with them to increase firepower a bit. And speaking of service, the RPK-74M was introduced by Molot in the 90s. A few sources say 1991, but 1993, 1994 seems to be a better estimate, because these were developed after the AK-74M, again along the same lines. And they were not purchased to outright replace the RPK-74 and its derivatives. Rather, as the Russian military needed more light machine guns, they were still issuing one per squad. And as the old ones wore out, they would replace them with the newer RPK74M. But actually, into the 21st century, the RPK74 itself was still standard issue. In fact, I talked with Legion USA, who had built those RPK guns here, about building RPK74s from kits. And they couldn't get them from Russia because they weren't being exported, because they weren't declared surplus. And that's kind of the thing. Whereas with the Segas, there are other AK-74 types in the country. But with the RPK-74, we've only had a few parts kits come in, namely those out of Bulgaria, which were actually Molot, just rebranded. And those were quite rare and expensive even then. VEPR built a few, but our options for 545 by 39 chambered RPK types have always been very small. The VEPRs came in for well over 10 years, closer to 15, even almost 20. But again, the earliest ones were sporterized, and even the later FM-47s and 74s, while correct for the most part, had the short 16.5-inch barrel and either a fixed stock or they had the tubular folding style. So yeah, just not quite right for that. Good guns, but just not an authentic RPK74M. And that's kind of the tragedy here. They were about to release these when the sanctions happened, but unfortunately they only had enough parts to make a few, and so it became a very limited item. And FIME/Arsenal/KVAR stretched them out about as much as they could, finally running out of stock essentially after SHOT Show of 2022. In the Russian army, in theory, the RPK-74 and RPK-74M are being replaced by the RPK-16. In reality, I'm not sure. As we've seen recently, the Russian military, what it has on paper and is doing on paper and funded, doesn't mesh well with the reality. The truth is, we're still seeing not only a lot of RPK-74Ms, we're seeing a lot of older RPKs themselves in service. I'm sure they do have some of the newer RPK-16s, but how many? Now, the RPK-16 is not so much derived from this as it is the AK-12. It's essentially an AK-12 with a heavier barrel, an interchangeable barrel, Picatinny rails, a modern adjustable and folding stock, modern furniture. The RPK-16 is actually the reason that Molot ended up being sanctioned in America in 2017. They were not sanctioned back in 2014 when Kalashnikov Concern was, because Molot was separate and independent from them. But because Molot worked with Kalashnikov Concern and the Russian government on the RPK-16, as well as the RPK-400 series, they ended up getting included because they became too closely connected with all of that going on. I mean, that's the reason stated at any rate. And of course, with recent events in 2022, yeah, we're not getting guns out of Russia anytime soon. So, it is what it is. I will say we were very fortunate just to get what we had, frankly, because back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it did not look like we would ever get a militarized version of either the Sega or the VEPR, and we ended up with both. Unfortunately, the Sega came in quite large numbers and was available for several years. The militarized VEPR was only available kind of after the sanctions, therefore prices were nutty, and no one knows exactly how many FIME had enough parts to assemble, but it wasn't a large number. Also in 2017, they were introducing the FM-308-22 and the FM-54-22, which are, militarized versions of this, but of course they're not really, they're more sporter, but yeah, they had new products they were going to unveil that fall. In fact, here's a little bit of shooting footage of the those, shall we call it, full caliber guns, just for fun. At any rate, no sense lamenting what we don't have. I'm actually happy that at least some of these were able to come in, because if the sanctions had happened a year, even 6 months earlier, we would never have seen any of these, and therefore the only RPK modernized we would have had was the VEPR 1V from IO. And that was a good gun. It was just mishandled by IO, because of course it was. Arsenal, FIME, they knew much better how to market these. And again, they did them in both calibers, 7.62 and 5.45. You get all the benefits of a factory-built gun. Russian 1.5 millimeter stamped receiver with properly forged trunnion and bolt carrier. True authentic barrel. And yes, you can take a regular VEPR FM-74 and make it into one of these, but with the prices of the standard model today, by the time you install the correct barrel assembly, which will probably have to be one of the earlier RPK 74s out of Bulgaria, the bipod, and if you want to go for the folding stock, by the time you do all that, you're really going to be in it about as much money as forking out for one of these, as sad as that is. I don't like that fact, but it's not easy to turn a VEPR FM into an RPK 74M clone. On the other hand, as with my Sega SGL 3194, I had to replace a few parts to make it correct. With this, I really didn't. These came in ready to go. They had the folding stock. They came with the standard pistol grip, which is correct for a 74M, but I just put this one on because I had it. Correct top cover, correct bipod. They come with a muzzle nut, but since Firecool had these 74M flash shaders, I couldn't help myself, and I think these look really cool with them on. So that's probably the biggest thing I did, and that just screws on. So they already take a standard capacity, double stack mag. Yeah, there's very little work that needs done to these to put them to rights, to make them as good of a clone as possible. So even though Molots are banned, at least they did go out with a bang. The FM-RPKs and the FM-308, FM-54, the last few guns that Arsenal FIME had were good ones. And the earlier VEPRs, like I said, they were coming in since the late 90s from Rob Arms and a couple others. So they are out there. And because these were built to be light machine guns firing in full auto and semi-auto only, they're going to last forever. And that's another thing. Spare parts, not really a concern. Anything that could potentially go bad or break, like say the recoil spring, bolt parts, trigger components, that's all standard AK-74 type. So if your firing pin or extractor goes bad, no problem. If your spring gets wimpy, easy to replace. If your trigger group goes wrong, easy to replace. Things like the receiver, trunnion, bolt carrier, barrel, I don't know what you'd have to do to wear them out, and frankly I'd be horrified to see what it would take, because yeah. And even this folding hinge here, it's very robust. They built it to last for the military to use. So, and it locks in both positions very securely. And like I said, it has the cleaning kit in it. And it's nice to be able to take about 10 inches, 11 inches off the length of a gun like this. Gets it pretty good. It's just a cool configuration, and you know how I feel about both Russian guns and light machine guns, especially the RPK. This was a dream gun of mine as well. So, like I said, we've mentioned other Russian guns recently, and since we're not going to get any more, why not revisit it as we move into 2022. But yeah, just thought I would share with you folks. Appreciate you tuning in, hanging out, all that fun good stuff. As always, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to the Patreon page. Kind of moving into a new year. Things are a little uncertain. You know how that goes. And sorry again for not taking this out to the range last time. I almost did, but with the limited availability of the ammunition now, I thought bringing only one 5.45 gun at a time would be kind of more sensible. And I'm glad I did, because we wouldn't have had time to run everything that day. And these puff gun mags are pretty cool too. Sold a lot of them. They have the metal lugs now. These came from Legion USA as well. And I've sold a bunch of them. And customer satisfaction is quite high. May not be as cool as the original Kalashnikov Concern one, but they do the job. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time.